All right, guys, I asked for it. You gave it on the last episode. I quickly asked for you guys to put in your questions, things you wanted answered by some key black belts within my association. Well, guys, this is it. We've got a ton of people here, UFC fighters, 3rd, 4th degree black belts in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, all here. Many of them are going to answer your questions. We're in sunny, well, it's Florida anyway, and we're going to answer your questions. My name is Bill Jones. I'm the head instructor of top-level martial arts in beautiful downtown Cuyahoga Falls. You're watching Professor's Corner. Keep watching. All right, guys, I'm here with Miss Kristen DeBrucker and Mr. Joey Deal, both Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu black belts. Kristen is also an expert in Muay Thai, trained a lot in Thailand, just got back, right?
Yes.
That's awesome.
6 weeks, yeah.
Joey Deal, Bellator veteran, EBI veteran, so we got some legit badasses here. Guys, one of the questions that came through was, if you could go back and talk to your white belt, blue belt, whatever self, what advice would you give?
You want to get this first one? Okay, no worries.
It's a pretty easy one for me. As soon as I read that question or heard that question, instantly the first thing I thought of was just this idea, because in the last few years, injuries are definitely a part of jiu-jitsu and martial arts in general. Everyone gets hurt at some point, and this idea of really trying to take your time and I would say mitigate the injuries as best you can. And I wish I could go back and tell myself from the beginning, as when I first started training martial arts, or even wrestling as a kid, is to invest as much time into my body as I do into the art itself. Right? And just realizing that if I do that, I'll have more quality time on the mat versus painful time on the mat, which was a lot of years in my jiu-jitsu life.
Yeah, a lot of people don't understand the importance of longevity in what you're doing.
Yeah. And quality too, right? Yeah. So longevity is one thing. A lot of people have longevity, but they're in so much pain, or even limited in what they can do because of their pain or issues, right? So quality and quantity of time is good for me. I want to feel good. My goal is to be able to do this till I'm very old and do it in a way that I feel good about my body, right?
That's a great answer. We're kind of tag along with what Joey said. So my big thing would be like enjoying the process. That would be the big thing, and some advice that I would say. Because when I started, I put so much pressure on myself to like how well I did in the gym, especially against the guys, because I was the only woman on the mat. So just enjoying the process of managing my expectations, because I would like roll, get tapped, go back and cry, get back on the mat, do it all. So putting too much pressure on yourself to look for an end result. And once I got to black belt, being like, oh, now I can actually start learning. It keeps going, it doesn't end. So I try to train like I don't have health insurance, because most of the time I don't. So I try to tap early, tap often, and just enjoy the process and go from a mindset of learning versus a mindset of winning. That would be the main thing for me.
I like that saying, train like you don't have health insurance. it's like driving like you stole it, train like you don't have health insurance.
Yes, that's fun. So to tag along with Joey says, like, taking care of your body by like being okay with losing, because when you fight like
a lot of it is ego for that.
Yeah, exactly. And then you realize that you're never ending though. There's no like end. Oh, okay, I made it to black. Now I'm done. No, you're not done. So you just have to enjoy the process. Jiu-Jitsu is a journey, not a destination. So that would be what I would say.
Yeah, these are great answers. Thank you guys so much for being along with me. All right, guys, so I'm here with Mr. David Porter. He's been on the show before. How you doing, David?
Doing well, thanks, Bill.
Good. So thanks for being on. And with him, we've picked a couple questions. One was, like, what percentage of rolls do you think should be, like, flow versus, like, smash, smash, smash? And I think the other one was, like, what was your first tournament experience like?
Cool. Let's answer that second one first. Is that cool?
You're the man.
Awesome. All right. So, I don't want to use this term lightly, but there are a lot of prolific competitors out there. And I think that having almost 300 matches and doing very well in the modern era. It's very easy to have people that only meet me in the last few years be like, oh man, you're so good at this, and not know that my first 10 tournaments I lost. And not just like 10 matches. I didn't get a win until my 11th tournament. So think about like paying a registration fee for like an event. Nowadays it's like $100 or more. You might get, 2 divisions for that or whatever, and then just losing constantly. But I was always looking at like little things I did right rather than the ultimate victory, and I kept improving upon that. So even though you lost over $1,000 in just registration fee, and then you think about travel and food and everything else, it's like, well, in the pursuit of what I wanted, it was the ultimate test for me. So it took a while before I finally got a victory, and my first victory was a submission victory, rear naked choke. I could tell you the date, nobody cares. But
the aside to that, for anybody who doesn't know David, is he has an eidetic memory for dates. Like, he can tell you the first day we met. He can tell you, it's uncanny. But anyway, go ahead.
Yeah. But when I finally got that first tournament match victory, I also went double gold that day. So it didn't happen overnight in terms of like the turnaround. It took a long time to get there, but when it did get there, it really got there. And I remember going into the match and I was just super calm, and I didn't care whether I lost or not. And I felt very confident in my abilities at that point, and when I went in, it just all made sense. And then I went on a very big winning streak until I went, oh, by the way, that first win was as a blue belt, and a late blooming blue belt at that, like later on into it. And I was a blue belt for almost 5 years. And then I didn't get my first loss until halfway through purple belt. In that time period after I'd gone on this crazy winning streak. And then it kind of settled out where I would win, 7 or 8 in a row, lose 1, come back, and then ultimately ended up with the record I had. So going in was very difficult the first time, and not knowing what to expect, freaking out, doing terrible, and then being like, oh, well, I guess it wasn't so bad. What can I learn from this? And then doing less bad, but still not having that victory, and then ultimately getting that victory down the road. But yeah, just perseverance. It'll get there.
That's awesome. And I think the question that came up, and it kind of coincides with tournament training, right? Like, it's like, what percentage do you go in and try to say, okay, I'm prepping, I'm going to smash, versus, just flowing? Like, what do you, just in general training?
Well, this brings me to something that happened earlier today in the retreat. Lots of people were rolling. I had a lot of fun rolling with everybody, but you rolled with Joey. Mm-hmm. I rolled with Joey, and Joey Deal is an incredible.
Oh, I love rolling with Joey Deal.
Yeah, so much fun. And
he was on a segment earlier. So
beautiful. Yeah. Watch it. And then, I rolled with him, and after several minutes of that, we finally finished with just like a mutual understanding that we're done. There were no submissions. 0 submissions. And the area where we were training just erupted in applause. And I couldn't figure out why. Because I'm like, this is how it should be done. You should go out, enjoy the roll, have fun, and no one should get hurt. And when you have 2 people that aren't trying to kill each other and know technical jiu-jitsu and can move, it's just so enjoyable. Why isn't everybody doing this more often? Because you don't need to kill each other every day to get better. And I think that you should do hard training once a week. I don't think you should do more than hard training once a week, because when people say, oh, it's just a small sprain. No, that's a small tear, right? When you say you have a sprain, like a sprained bicep or a sprained whatever, it's a small tear. Or, oh, I tweaked my knee a little bit. That's your ligaments screaming at you. Well, why would you just come in and let these things keep happening and keep going hard? You're just going to be too broken to do anything with it. So I do believe in hard training, and I believe that when you do train hard, you should make sure it's with purpose. You should do it under the confines of a tournament round for tournament prep. If you're that person that says, well, I would never do a tournament, I just like to go hard, go find an MMA gym. Like, honestly, they'll go hard all day. They don't care. But if you're trying to do jiu-jitsu, like, work your technique. Your technique is so much more important than how hard can you go, because you can adjust the amplitude whenever. But if you can't, like, technically control the vessel, who's going to worry? So what Master Sauer loves to say is, you don't give a Formula One car to a 16-year-old. They can't handle that power. They need to learn the technical driving skills with a lesser powered vehicle first, then you give them the turbo. So most of the time I've rolled this whole weekend has been relatively flowy when I have the ability to trust my training partner. Mm-hmm. But in a camp like this, where you don't know a lot of the people, we have 95 people here, and about half I've never met before. I have to be on my top defensive game, and most of them are trying to, like, experience the quickening if they take my skill because they beat me. That's a Highlander reference, right? And so it's been a little rougher than I had hoped, but I'm not super bruised up or banged up. I would just say, when it's your home school, make it a point to do probably like the 80-10-10 rule. 80% of the time, you're doing a base level of like 20 to 30%. And I wouldn't call that flow per se. I would just say you're not training with heavy intensity. That's the rate you should be normally going at. Then 10% of the time, it's focused individual positional sparring from deficits, not from your best positions. You'll get there in your 80% because that's what we do. We do our A game when we have the option. But 10% of the time, you should be fighting from your deficits, and you should start there and reset there and just do that constantly. And then 10% of the time, it's go hard. So, you know, you can sprinkle out the positional sparring at the start of every session. You know, some instructors do that, that's fine, and that'll help every student. Or the student should do that at open mat. They should take the time to say, okay, I hate this quote, by the way. Hey man, where are you having trouble? Oh, I suck everywhere. No, dummy, quantify it. Something sucks more than something else. Figure it out.
Yeah, that bothers me too.
It's a pet peeve. Like, you know you can't escape the back. I take your back, you're there for 20 minutes. Like, whoever. So do that. Go to open mat and don't just roll with everybody that's your buddy. Do it with, like, some forethought. Say, okay, this Saturday I'm coming into open mat and I'm going to work my back escapes. Just do it for 3 rounds.
And just let everybody start on your back.
Yeah.
And like, if you're not sure that you'll end up there.
Yeah, and guess what? You'll get choked, you'll get armbarred, or you'll escape. But just reset every time and build that awareness. And to that effect, here's kind of like the bonus. And this is more unrealistic, but if we could do this, this would be wonderful. Let's say I only had enough time at an open mat to get 100 reps of a move. Rather than picking, you know, like your gym boyfriend or girlfriend to try it with, because we all have that one buddy we want to just gravitate towards, doing 100 reps with them is not as beneficial to us as if instead of doing 10 reps with 10 different body types. Mm-hmm. So if I can only do 100 reps, I'm going to learn way more about that one move, just figuring out the little nuanced behavior. Because when I was working with you for one day of this camp, or 2 of the sessions, versus Caleb McAllister for 1 session, versus, you know, whoever we jumped in with, because you jumped in with Jeff Curran, I jumped in with Curran, and it's different, and it changes some things, and that's wonderful because we're all learning different stuff from the same move. Mm-hmm. So those are some of my thoughts, and I'm glad I could share some.
Yeah, excellent. I'm always glad to have you on. You know that. One last one I figure maybe we can just talk about quickly. Sure. Is someone asked, when did you fall in love with rolling? And I kind of wanted to give some thoughts on that, and then maybe you can throw some thoughts in too. Oh, by the way, guys, check out this mug. This is sick. Who got this for you?
Jason Gammerdiner.
Yeah, awesome. Darth Vader mug. That's great. But it was like, when did you fall in love with rolling? And I think there's some people that just love it from the beginning. They love the contact. They love the feeling of it, and I think that's normal. But I don't think you truly fall in love with rolling until you can actually do it well.
Yeah.
Like, the reason I enjoy rolling is because it's not difficult for me anymore. Like, it can be, certainly. Like, if I say, hey, David, right now, let's do like a hard roll. But that's not fun. Like, that's like you said, like 10%, like, that you should ever do that. Because, like, we don't get to experiment at that point. But like once you start learning more jiu-jitsu and you can play with it and know the moves, I feel like that's when you fall in love with it. And then, I mean, I guess that's all I have to say about that. What do you think?
I completely agree. And you're only going to start getting better at it through doing it.
Yeah.
So the problem is you have to do this thing you don't like for a long time until you actually like it. And it's weird. Because
it's like, what's that? When you get kidnapped and you fall in love with your...
Stockholm Syndrome.
Stockholm Syndrome. It's like Stockholm Syndrome.
Yeah, it really is.
Jiu-Jitsu.
Yeah. But the weird part about it is, even if you don't personally love it for yourself, you can be a spectator and appreciate when others are enjoying it. Mm-hmm. So you can see two people going at it, breaking a sweat and doing like incredibly dynamic things with smiles on their faces and be like, I want that.
Yeah.
Just remember that. Set it in your memory as like something you're looking to achieve. It's a goal.
Yeah. And I think the last thing I would say about that is it doesn't ever have to be your favorite part of jiu-jitsu. No. It's certainly a part you have to do. I mean, for it to be good, positive jiu-jitsu. But like, if you prefer to practice self-defense, go practice self-defense. Like, you know what I mean? Like if you prefer to just drill moves, there's nothing wrong with that. But you have to be able to roll because you have to be able to execute. But it doesn't have to be your favorite thing.
But doing jiu-jitsu without rolling is now kata.
Yes, I agree.
And here's the problem. The reason why a lot of kata practitioners will get the occasional jab from us is because I would love to see them stop my double leg takedown. Your one block has no power here. What are you going to do? You've beaten a million invisible opponents with your forms, your empty forms. But the reason why jiu-jitsu is such a potent martial art is because we prove it every day on the mats. Mm-hmm. So you might not like rolling, or let's be more specific, open training. But you should definitely get used to understanding, like, if the instructor says, hey, we're positionally sparring, you have to escape side control. You should show the technical proficiency to do that movement, because one day it might save your life. So if you can't escape the mount, if you can't escape the back, if you're in these bad positions and you can't do that, we have failed you as an instructor. But the students will inevitably get those skills as long as they come to class and follow the instruction. You'll get to the point where you put those positional spars all together and you Voltron a roll. And now it's, oh, I'm chaining these things together. Oh, I'm rolling.
And if you guys didn't appreciate it, I'm just going to point out that he pointed out he used Voltron as an analogy for jiu-jitsu, and that's phenomenal. All right, my man. Thanks for being on.
Always.
I'll talk to you later.
Cheers.
All right, guys, welcome back. So we're sitting here with the legend himself, Professor Jeff Curran, 4th degree black belt under Master Pedro Sauer. Been training jiu-jitsu so long that when it came to light to most of the United States population in 1993, you were sitting there watching Hoist saying, hey, that's the same stuff I do. Like, he was already training before everybody else saw it.
Yeah, I was showing, as I watched the first pay-per-view, which took about like 4 hours for us to figure out how to set up the cable box that was required to buy a pay-per-view. I was armbarring my friends and like showing them what I did and stuff like that, and then Hoist's promo came on and it was just like, man, that guy does what I do. And then I learned the lineage and the history a little bit more, even though I knew a little bit about it, I realized like quickly that I was just kind of like a drop of sand on the beach, like I was just someone that did what he did. I was just along for the ride, so it was pretty cool.
Well, and you've gone ahead and created quite a legacy yourself. One of the only fighters to have fought in like all the Zuffa organizations, UFC, Strikeforce, WEC. I mean, just back in the day too. Like, and I'm not discounting anything, but like, I don't know. I feel like there was a time when it was more wild west than it is now, and fewer rules, and it was just a different time.
Yeah, I mean, MMA was MMA was no holds barred or vale tudo. No, it was not. I was so excited the first time that I read an article that this guy Dana White was helping try to make the fighting, I should say, not even a sport, it wasn't a sport yet, might make fighting or the UFC a mainstream sport. I was like, oh guys, how cool would it be if like you could have rankings and weight classes, and that stuff was so far off the map for me that when it actually happened and my manager called me and said, hey, did you see the rankings? I'm like, where? He's like, on such and such a website. I'm like, I don't even know what website you're talking about because I don't have internet. That's how long ago it was. I didn't have an email, I didn't have internet, and maybe I could find a dial-up from a friend or something and like look up, and I'm like, wow, there's actually articles out there with my name in it or a photo of me, one of my fights, and just such different times. And when it started to kind of go over the tipping point, it was a cool time, because the early days were just like you said, wild, wild west. It was show up and fight whoever, whenever. I had no idea who I was fighting. Sometimes I paid to enter, like amateur tournaments, I'd pay to get an entry fee, and then if you won, you got your money back. It was nuts, man. It was just a totally different world.
Well, I tell you what, a couple questions came up people told us to ask. And by the way, for anybody who's unsure or you haven't been paying attention, guys, Jeff is the one who put together this whole retreat that I'm on. And he does it every year, and I think you're talking about maybe doing a couple of them a year, but it's bjjretreats.com. We're here in Clearwater, Florida this year, but it's a great event. We had about 100 people on the mat this year, and I'm not just talking about like just random people. I'm talking like Jeff himself was teaching. We had Bellator fighter Joey Deal. We had UFC fighter Cole Miller. And I mean a host of other just really skilled black belts teaching, and it's a great thing. So thanks for putting that together.
Yeah, it's just growing into something pretty cool. For me, it starts out as just kind of the dream or idea of having a big event that's non-political. It doesn't have anything to do with a specific team. So this one had 23 different teams, but it's also a really good excuse for me to have a vacation in Florida.
That's why I do it too. So on to some of the questions. Some people left some questions, and I apologize for the sound in the background. We had to use the lobby of the hotel we're in, so hopefully you guys are hearing us just fine. But one of the questions that I know that, like, I thought, man, if I wanted to ask anybody this question, it's you, and it was, what was your first, they said, I think, competition, but I think it'd be even more interesting, like, what was your first fight like? What do you remember about that?
Well, I'll sum them both up. But the first time I ever did like anything competition based in like jiu-jitsu or fighting was when I was like 15 or 16 years old. I was training in Arizona with Megaton, and I was taking flights out there to take like from Chicago to Arizona and spending a week or two at a time and just gaining experience and training. And I remember one day he said, "Hey, we're gonna go from Phoenix to Flagstaff for this judo tournament, and we should all go." And I was a white belt in jiu-jitsu. Like, I never did anything in my life remotely close to jiu-jitsu as far as competition. I played hockey, I played baseball, I wrestled, but jiu-jitsu was new. And we went to a judo tournament, which I had no clue about. And he said, yeah, just do a couple of things like this and a couple practices. And we went and I did like black belt open class, and I had like 6 matches, and I won like all 6 of them, like by triangle. It's like I did a sacrifice throw and I choked everybody out. It's like I don't even know what division I fought in, other than it was a black belt division for like juvenile at some judo tournament. And I was like, man, this is awesome. We drove like hours up there, and everyone was there, and it was just cool. But that was kind of my first ever experience in a jiu-jitsu kind of realm. And then a few years later, I made my fighting debut in a tournament for Extreme Challenge, and I did an 8-man tournament in a bar. I was getting carded to go in. The promoter, who became my manager, Monty Cox, had to like negotiate with the door guy to let me in because it was so young that I was okay to fight. And I ended up doing 3 fights in one night, and it took like 12 to 14 hours all day long. I just sat in this bar, And I won all 3 fights, and it was pretty cool. And that was it. That was my first experience, and I was fearless. Like, I had no, like, I wasn't worried about what would happen or anything. It was just like a moment you never get back, because after that, I was like, wow, this is real. If I screw up next time, people are going to think I'm not good. Or if I screw up next time, I could really get hurt. You know, and as time went on, it was just like, you know, the pressure gets more and more. You think it would give you like relief as time goes on, but the pressure just kind of builds up. So you either kind of break, or you just adjust and find ways to cope with it and better yourself and keep training and stuff like that. And then, you know, I've had like these like long win streaks where I'm like 15, 16, even 18 fights deep winning. And then you end up losing everything from jiu-jitsu to boxing, MMA, like 7 times in a row for like 2 years straight, and you feel like a total loser. So you're like, man, what the hell, you know? Like, I used to be good at this, and I used to be ranked, and then you're still ranked, but you watch yourself go from like 3 to 4 to 5 to 6. And for myself, like as a competitor, when I started being able to like look at something or like quantify it on paper, the pressure got even more intense, and that's when I like everything in my life just shifts, and I become even a different animal than I think I was, like where my commitment becomes only about the success, I guess, of the moment. So going back to those first like couple combative experiences, like they still like live in me today. Like, as you can tell, as I talk about it, I just start like, I ramp up and think like, cool, let's book a fight. You know, I get pretty pumped up, but you know.
Well, that's awesome, man. Thank you so much for sharing that, and I really appreciate you being on the show. I know you're a busy guy, and
yeah, we're here.
I'm sure everybody appreciates it.
My pleasure. I love talking about fighting, especially with people. If you know, if you're watching a podcast that has something to do with jiu-jitsu or MMA, that means you're interested in the sport, and that's the audience that I'm 100% happy to talk to about, you know, rather than somebody that has no clue what's going on. So I'm always down for it. Anytime you want to talk, I'm down.
All right. Well, thank you so much. And guys, don't forget bjjretreats.com. Check that out. If you're watching this because you love jiu-jitsu, I highly recommend it. This is the second time I've been out to this event, and I think it's phenomenal. Well put together. Everything taught flowed together. So it's like, it's hard to forget the information because it all flowed together so well. So, you know, which I think is always a complaint of seminars. Like, how do I remember all this? But like literally, like every presenter coordinated everything together, so it feels like it's really easy to remember.
Yeah, you know, I think I've been to a lot of camps and, you know, amazing stuff, but the more I've done in my life, the more I realize like so many good things to take away from every experience I've had with camps and stuff like that. But even with my own career, I try to teach from my failures more than my success. So when I see things that go bad, I right away say I want to adjust things, and I pull the instructors aside and I say, look, tell me what you're going to teach. Have a plan. Let me know what it is so I can tell you whether or not I approve it or don't approve it, because I want it in the wheelhouse. Because when you leave a retreat after 4 days of training, I want to pack all of these materials up in your suitcase and you take it home with you. And then it's done. And then you could go home and you can work on it. So that's kind of the whole idea. Rather than just kind of shooting in the dark and showing off like popular moves and stuff like that, it's got to fit.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Well, thanks so much. I really appreciate it, Professor.
My pleasure.
All right, guys. I am on the way home from Florida from the BJJ retreat. I just want to thank you for watching this, guys. Don't forget to hit that like and subscribe so that you can get notifications about upcoming videos. Thank you so much. I'll talk to you later. Peace.